Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 285. My name is MBZ. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host. It's, of course, Sonic the fucking Hedgehog. Bally, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Why am I Sonic?
It's because, I don't know, like, you go fast, and I don't go fast, apparently.
Right. Just what we were talking about.
Even though I am the one who in video games always complains that I don't go fast enough, it seems like I have been beaten in speed, so it's not great.
We've always said I'm the 3D platforming guy, and you're the 2D
it's true.
one.
It's true.
I have to live up to my name.
Yeah. Basically, Bal's a piece of shit. He's cheated his way to the top, and it's just shameful, frankly. These Astrobot speedrun levels came out, and I knew as soon as that happened, I knew it's like Bally's he's gonna do whatever it takes to like beat me into the ground, and he just did it on his own. Like I didn't even get very close. I was like trying to get there, and then he's like, no, I'm just gonna I'm gonna beat you further. It's like how it take another second and another second, and so yeah, that's where we find ourselves.
So I had made a time, and then earlier in the day, and you're like, right, you logged in, you checked it out, you got your time down a bit, you saw my time. And then as you thought you had beaten my time, it then like refreshed the time, and I'd already gotten a faster time, and you were...
Because I think you logged on while I had started doing this, basically.
Right, yeah.
Which
was
is some sneaky fucking underhanded tactics, frankly. So...
Am I not allowed to attempt to beat my time while you're trying to beat
No, first you let me have a little bit of like enjoyment so I can get like a little bit of, some kind of bonus kind of positivity in my life, but I guess not. I guess it's just all robbed from me.
If you want to beat my time, add me on PlayStation. I'm Ballyman91, so yeah, add me and we can race, because I know there's 5 more courses to come, and it could be fun. Have some community races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be prepared for Bally to beat you into the ground. It's great. So we're here today, of course, to talk about not that, but about other video games. Bally, what are we talking about today?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. One of those games is I beat The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. So for the second segment, we're going to talk about some spoilers for Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. But in the first segment, I'm going to give some non-spoilery final thoughts.
Yeah. Absolutely. So stick around for that. I'm sure by this point in time, I think most people out there will have wrapped up Echoes of Wisdom. If you haven't, then feel free to leave that segment until later, and you can come back to it. But let's kick things off with a brand new video game, Bally. A brand new game that I think both of us have had some anticipation for, been looking forward to. It is called Neva. There's like 700 versions of that, apparently. I think they did like loads of different takes of it during voice recording. But this is from Namada Studios, published by Devolver Digital. This studio made a game called Grease that came out in, I want to say 2018, something around that period of time.
Yeah.
And I think I played it like right at the end of that year. So I don't think I played it.
Came out on your birthday in 2018.
Yes, yeah. So I think I did play it soon after it released. I got a lot of good buzz around it, and I was very interested, so I picked it up. And I think Grease surprised me in a few ways, in the sense that like I expected it to be like this beautiful artistic thing, but sometimes when it comes to games in that vein, I've played definitely my fair share of like artsy games that have style but not much substance. And I think Grease was interesting because I expected it to be a bit more like that. But it actually was a bit more mechanically rich than I was kind of like thinking it was going to be, and like there was elements of it of like early on you get this power to turn into like a stone block, and there's this whole like sequence of a wind blowing and you stopping it, and like it felt like it had some density. Like it's always light mechanically still, very puzzle solving focused,
solid puzzle platforming in there.
Puzzle platforming, some really beautiful. Obviously the art is incredibly striking, music is very transcendent, and like beautiful like animation of like I remember the trees where there's these kind of square trees that would like appear and disappear in this very flowy way of like you would platform over them, and it would be like a timing based puzzle of like, oh, it's going to disappear and you have to jump off it, but the way that it would disappear and the animation, the flourishes that went along with it were just absolutely stunning. And so I think we both were big fans. You played it a little bit later, you came to it later, but I was a big fan of it, and then you played it, and you obviously really enjoyed it as well. And yeah, I'd categorize Grease as more of just a puzzle-focused platforming game with some parts of it that, like, later on I found, like, oh, maybe this idea has gone on a little too long and stuff like that. But for the most part, I thought it was super well paced, only like 4 hours long. And very much enjoyed that game. And so along comes Neva, that was announced maybe a couple of years ago at this point, and very much sticking with the signature style of the studio in the sense that it has beautiful artwork, clearly an emotional story at the heart of it, and soundtrack that kind of lives alongside that and kind of works in tandem to create that very kind of artistic experience, I would say. But one of the interesting parts about this game when it was being shown off was, oh, you have a sword. Oh, there's combat in this game. So it felt like they were kind of taking a bit of a step forward and saying, okay, we're gonna try something a bit more traditional, which actually I think in this way makes it a bit more bold in that way, because you expect a game like this to never have combat, and so by implementing it into this style of game, it feels a little maverick in a way. It feels like, oh, you're doing something new, because it's taking a traditional game mechanic but putting it in a space that you wouldn't expect necessarily. So I was very interested to see how that would turn out. And so we have both now finished Neva. Took me about 3.5 hours. And I think it's an astonishing game. I think it is better than Grease in a lot of different ways, but I think overall, pacing to visual, just like there are moments in this game that are some of the most striking pieces of art. Like every screenshot in this game you could take is like a wallpaper or something that you could put in a gallery, right? It is absolutely stunning from a visual perspective, and I think mechanically just satisfying, strong. Like it's not the level of like an Ori and the Will of the Wisps in terms of like precision platforming or precision combat, but it feels satisfying and good, and movement is on point, and they introduce and get rid of mechanics at a really good pace, always having something slightly fresh to change things up, to make the platforming interesting, to make the combat a little bit more interesting, and adding to your arsenal and the way that things work, and ultimately, like, narratively, through gameplay, do an exceptional job of telling this story of this girl and her wolf dog, deer thing, whatever it is, like a kind of mystical, all of those in one, like white fur, like I think it's exceptionally well made, and it really blew me away. So yeah, Bally, what were your thoughts overall on Neva?
It also blew me away. Before I give my thoughts, I should say I got a new OLED 4K TV. It was an LG C4 55-inch for any tech people out there want to know the specs. And what's unique about this game on PS5 is it's one of the few games on PS5 that actually runs 120 frames per second. And my new flashy TV has a setting. It's got a number of different game settings. It's even got a setting for like first-person shooters, RPGs, standard, user-based experience. Like there's different video game genres and settings.
Okay.
I think I had it in standard, but one cool thing about my TV is it will tell you what the frame rate is of the game you're currently playing. So, for example, I was in the menu of my PS5 and I was like, why is it saying 60? This thing's meant to run at 120. Why is it not doing that? And I toggled on the thing and it wasn't showing. And then I realized it only showed it when I went into the game. So I had to go into Neva and then it
the menu's too powerful to run at 120 frames per second, obviously. So
yes, exactly. So I'm slightly rose tinted in the sense that this is my first experience of OLED, and it was just incredibly bright.
I mean, you couldn't choose a better game for it, honestly.
It's like visually I had my jaw on the floor most of the time, especially like when the game switches. It's seasons in this game, but like chapters, and like the visual style just changes from one bold thing to the next. It really hit me hard. And did I notice 120 frames versus 60? I think I probably did, but I would probably find that difference easier to spot in a game that wasn't 2D and based on animation, like a 3D third-person combat game or FPS or something. I'd probably find it easier to tell, but it still looked stunning. And so with that to the side, I think that as a game, it is just immaculate. I agree with your thoughts about Grease, where I really enjoyed Grease. It's fantastic. It's a great puzzle platformer. but I think it is so bold that this game does add the combat, because similar to you, I've played games that are stylistically cool and have some great ideas, but mechanically fall flat. Like a great example is Maquette, for example. Like it visually looks cool, the idea works, but then it just doesn't hold up gameplay wise. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are artistically very impressive, and they think, let's turn my hand to a video game, and for numerous reasons it doesn't stick the landing. And Greece was,
I mean, the other Devolver release this year, The Plucky Squire, kind of fell on that side of the fence for you, right?
Right,
In terms of
totally.
It's kind of like visually amazing, but mechanically didn't quite hit.
Yes, and Greece is an example of a game that is visually immaculate and stunning, but then mechanically really holds up to and is a very solid puzzle platformer.
Yeah.
But to go from a very solid puzzle platformer, and there's like very minor puzzle platforming elements in Neva, but predominantly it is about the combat. To go from puzzle platforming to combat, I think requires a lot more knowledge of how. I think a combat Metroidvania style or level-based game, whatever you want to call it, is harder to make mechanically feel good necessarily than perhaps a Greece would. So I think it was a bold take in that, and I do think the combat is very slick and it's fast and the timing is important, but there are still crucial Souls-like style dodging windows where you are like, oh, I've done my move too early, now I'm going to get hit, and you know that before the hit comes. Like, there are specific windows where you're expected to dodge, and there's some tricky boss fights in there and other things that I think are done so well. And when it mechanically feels as strong as it does, but then on top of that has this insane animation that for me is up there with Spiritfarer. This is up there with Spiritfarer. Maybe even has even better animation than Spiritfarer, but where Spiritfarer's animations are so cool and look great, a lot of them are in cutscenes or dialogue, or you know, the running around of that game is not
like very chill moments of like the fishing rod and stuff like that.
Very chill moments. That game's not an action game. For this game to have that level of animation and style, I'm thinking of in particular a handful of boss fights. I was blown away by how immaculate the animation was in relation to the combat that you are executing.
All I need to say is the color red, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, but like that fight is just. I looked away from the screen. I was like, my eyes were just like going crazy because like of how bright and just how like stark it was, and how focused I was on like learning the moveset for that fight and nailing it, and like the way in which the further you get, the more moves get introduced, and you're learning new ones as it goes. And obviously, I don't think it's that difficult. I don't think it's actually that challenging. I think it's just a case of pattern recognition and a case of patience and execution. But it's done with just such panache and style, and it feels great. Like immediately out the gate, you have a double jump and a dash, and I'm like, great, this is a video game for me. Fantastic. I knew you were going to say that. Like immediately, I'm like, okay, I'm dashing, I'm jumping, I'm going, I'm just moving, and it feels good off the bat, which is exactly what I'm always looking for. And I think that leads into why the combat feels so satisfying, because the dodge roll and the dash, like they're built in a way where you have invincibility frames going through attacks that enemies do, and so you know, learning those and being able to exploit them is very satisfying. And the roll behind of like an enemy's about to attack you, and the animation is built in such a way that like it winds up, and so you have enough time to see it coming and to dodge out the way and to counterattack. But I think they do a good job of like throwing in a good variety of like, sometimes when you get to an arena fight of like multiple enemies, it's like, now we're going to introduce these flying ones alongside these ones that throw stuff at you, alongside these ones on the ground, and like it starts to become a management thing. And then later on you get a power up that lets you use your wolf in a cool way, and that like really enhances that sense of control over the battlefield and what you're doing, which I thought was super satisfying.
And they've got a real satisfying mechanic with the combat that I think I've seen in games, but I can't think off the top of my head which one. But if you combine a number of hits sequentially, you will regain health back. So you've only got 3 health pips, but you can lose them very easily, but you can regain 1 back for every, I think it's like 8 hits or so in a row. If you get 8 hits in a row, you get one back.
Yeah, so if you do it without getting touched at all. So it's a little, like, it's adjacent to what Hollow Knight is. Hollow Knight's slightly different in that you're building up a juice that you then have to pop to heal yourself.
Right.
Whereas this is as if that juice is just automatically going to give you health. So yeah, it feels similar to that in some ways.
Yeah, which is nice, and I like that a lot. I like that the combat is in distinct arenas. It's rarely used outside of those, which I think is also really nice. And yeah, I do think the story of this game is a little more simple than Greece, and for that reason I like it more.
Yeah, it's less like Greece was very metaphorical, let's say, in terms of what it was like. You know, it was more like emotionally wrought, but didn't have like a structure, like a traditional narrative structure, I would say. Whereas this is a bit more straightforward, but I still think packs a pretty hard punch.
Yeah, basically. And I think like the relationship between Alba and Neva like is good and solid, and you care about it, and it's interesting where that relationship goes. I think I'm also a really strong sucker for games that base themselves around seasons, like The Last of Us Part 1. I love the fact that game's based around seasons. Forza Horizon 4, that game is also based around...
Interesting example, but sure, yeah.
But just because I think setting the tone of a color scheme based on seasons really resonates with me. Like, we are currently...
It's also a passage of time thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, Neva grows through the seasons and grows over time, and abilities get introduced and change as that happens. Like, the moment that opens winter, I was like, oh, hell yeah, let's fucking go. Like, the movement thing that gets added at the start of that chapter, I was like, oh, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And, like, the connection that you have between the two characters, I think that's the thing that really stuck with me. I think this is maybe the best opening hour I've played of a game in recent memory, where I think, like, for you, this probably is... You could take a comparison point with The Last Guardian, I think. Like, what they do in the opening of this game to create that bond between you and the wolf, deer, dog thing, to create that kind of, like, storytelling through gameplay is... It's so smart in the way that, like, you start out and you're jumping on these platforms, right? And you can make this jump. You jump from this other platform, you jump there, and you see Neva on the other side, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can make this jump. And they, like, psych themselves up to do it, and they, like, jump, and they miss, and they fall down. And then...
They're like a puppy.
Yes, they're like a puppy, basically. And so you, like, go down, and they come back up again, and, like, you can pet them as well as part of this. And I think...
Of course.
Usually, when I see that in games, I'm like, oh, it's, you know... It's whatever. It's a very kind of like...
You're also not a dog person.
No, also, yeah, I hate animals, as we all know. So I think... But the way that it's done here, it feels like you are building that bond and building that trust, because then you jump across and they try again and they're like, oh, this time they nailed it. And, like, you see over time, like... they get to another bigger jump, and, like, then you're there to catch them, which is really nice. And then at the end of the game, that is reflected in a different way that I thought was so good, like, from a narrative perspective, how it all ties together. And, you know, as Neva grows older, you get to the second season, and she's just, like, going ahead of you, just, like, running ahead of you and, like, magically jumping over these spots that's taking you a bit long. So you're having a harder time keeping up with them. Like, so it's just, I think they do such an exceptional job of storytelling through gameplay moments like that, of, like, it's just the dog doing stuff and, like, jumping around, and, you know, there's moments of, like, it's just like, oh, gnashing an enemy, and just, like, you're like, Neva, and then it's like takes a couple of those for it to be like, oh, all right, I'm going to throw it to the side and then move on with you. Like, there is that button means something. It actually meaningfully affects the relationship between the two characters and what they're going through. I thought it was just exceptionally done. Just very, very, very smart.
And I love that this game is 4 hours. I love that there's no dialogue or, you know, I mean, she says Neva and, like, that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe barring one or two other things. But, like, it's simple. And it's well told. It's a small and contained piece of art. Like, it just feels very special playing it. Like, every single second you're playing it, it just feels really, really crafted, well put together. No glitches whatsoever. You know, like, it's just so immaculate, and it just felt so special, like, start to finish. And like I already said, a step up on Greece, which is a pretty big praise considering how great Greece was. Like it's
Yeah.
it's special.
It just has vision, right? It just has a clear, coherent vision of what it wants to be, the story it wants to tell, the way that it is paced. Like, I think there were a couple of moments of like, okay, I'm just doing a bit more jumping and a bit more of this, but I think for the most part, every area you get to feels like it introduces something new, whether it's an environmental thing that you have to deal with, or a new enemy type you have to deal with, or just something new that you can then do as a character. There's always a bit of freshness being injected, right? Like, and I think there's an interesting kind of like, I wonder, like, does this tie back to Greece in some way? Like, there are architecturally there are some similarities, you know, like there's obviously like the opening parts of the game are very lush and like environment rich, and you're going through these spaces that feel organic, and then like partway through the game you start finding these buildings that kind of collapse, and some of them have more kind of human-like structures to them.
Yes.
But they're all built in the same way that Greece was, and I don't know if that is a way to tie it into it.
Yeah, because one is very much like you said, one is Greece is very much not the real world, and parts of Neva very much feel like the real world, and that's hence how they can show off seasons so well. Like, it is very much the real natural world, and then like you say, there are large parts in Neva that feel dreamlike in a similar way to Greece. So it's like,
absolutely.
What is there a relationship between those two? Yeah, I mean, in terms of the way they look like identical in some parts, right?
Like, is it as simple as, hey, we have these assets, let's use them again, you know? Like, it could be. I feel like that's not kind of the style of the studio. I feel like there's more intention behind it than that, potentially.
I think they made this whole game in 4 years, they said. So
right, yeah.
It's fairly tight turnaround-ish. I know enough about development, but like, it's...
Yeah. I mean, it feels edited, you know? It feels like a game that they trimmed the fat, like they knew exactly what it needed to be. This game wouldn't work if it was 7 hours long, you know?
Not all seasons are the same length, which I think is a nice step. Like, I liked that about the game. It wants more where it's good and less where it's not needed. You know, that shows good editing.
And I think there's also a sense of like having grown and taking some ideas that existed in the previous game, but developing them a bit more and making them work a bit better. All I'll say is like reflection. Like I think in Greece there's like an area that does some of that stuff, but here I think they bring it back in a much more interesting way and do more with it and like make it a bit more satisfying.
It's visually stunning while also mechanically impressive. And there's multiple points in this game that you can tick both those boxes. And
for sure,
I can't think of a crazy number of games that are the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very nice to have those moments of spectacle as well, because I think there's a crescendo at which I'm just sitting there just watching the end of a boss fight happen, and like the music is soaring and it's just visually stunning, and then it just like everything explodes into light, and it's just this euphoria, right? It's just absolutely incredible moments that happen, and there's really nothing like it. I think it is. They clearly took their time with it, and they clearly had time to cook, and like you said, it feels immaculate in every way, like fully polished and just distinct in its identity, and I think also just like well checkpointed, you know, like it's a silly thing to be like, oh, but you know, sometimes you get sent back in video games too much, and it's like, nope, if you die in a fight you start exactly back at that fight. Like if you are in the middle of a sequence and it feels like there should be a checkpoint, there is one, like the final boss for example, there's a middle point of that boss fight and you're like, goodness. Oh, I hope I don't do that, and then you die and you're like, I hope I don't go back to the beginning, and it's like, no you don't, you get the checkpoint.
Well done,
like,
game.
It's exactly, it knows exactly what you want from it, and it is challenging, but it's also not that difficult, right? I think it also depends on like your skill level coming into this.
If you've played the number of Metroidvanias and 2D platformers we have, it's moderate. And I think that is a good level that this game should be. It's also got an easier setting. Which is good, because I do think there are certain people out there who played Greece, more casual people, right? So like I've talked before, they're here for the art. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like I talked before about a booktuber I watch, Murphy Napier, and she this is her favorite game. Greece is her favorite game, right? And I think not traditionally someone who plays a lot of games, and so someone like that probably is there more for the story and for kind of like the emotional moments and those types of things. And you don't want somebody like that who's a big part of your audience, because Greece reached a huge, I think they sold 3 million copies, like they reached a huge number of players. It makes sense that they would have an easier story-focused mode for people like that who just want to like get like the joy of playing through it and not get hung up on like a really tough fight, right, for example. So but it's great that they can cater to both, because like I'm someone who really likes that and really enjoys the fact that the game was like, no, we're going to have a boss fight here and you're going to have to get through it and learn it, and it's going to be satisfying, but it's also you're going to want to die because you're going to want to see these animations again and again, you know, like it's one of those weird situations where I'm like, oh, I don't mind that I died on that boss a couple of times because I just get to like see it again, just to have that kind of visual splendor just injected into my eyeballs. It's also it's a little tricky to kind of talk a bit more deeply about, just because, you know, I think so much of the joy of this game is that surprise, is that element of like getting to a new place, seeing a new mechanic, interacting with something in a different way, seeing the journey that the characters go on and like how they change over time. I think, you know, it's not a game where like you need like a 2-hour spoiler cast or whatever, but I think, you know, it's there's definitely a lot to dig into there, and I don't want to rob people of that stuff. I think people should just go in blind, go and play it, and just have like an amazing 4 hours that is just going to take you on an amazing journey, really. So yeah, I think it comes with like one of my highest recommendations. I think it's just an exceptional piece of art, honestly. Like when people talk about games as art, stuff like this is what I think of. It's like they've made something that is not just visually, because it's obvious that it's visually, you know, spectacular, but I think it's so much deeper than that. It's rooted in their approach to narrative and to their approach to design, and also their approach to like secret finding and like those extra flowers that you can come across, right? Like I was always incentivized to be like, I wonder if I can figure out how to get that, right? Like, and it's the reward is nothing. The reward is like, you got the flower, great. But I think the best collectibles. No, I didn't. No, I mean, I basically, if I saw one, if I was like, I think I can get that, I stayed there and tried to get it.
I didn't look for them. If I saw them, I'd try and get it. And
exactly, I did the exact same thing. And I think for me, the mark of a good secret is one that it doesn't matter what the reward is. It just, the satisfaction is figuring it out and how to get to it, right? And I think this game in particular does that very, very well also. So you know, it's not a game I'm going to go and replay. It's one of those you kind of want to wipe from your memory and play again, you know. But I do think on that level, I think it does do a good job of like having secrets that are interesting to figure out mechanically, right? It makes you think a little bit and makes you like put some of the mechanics a little bit on their head and be like, oh, okay, this is what I should do here, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it just has a very good kind of like, it's good at leading you to where you need to be and what you're supposed to do at every moment in time, right? Like there's a subtlety to, oh, this wall has like these white dots on it, that means it's climbable, right? And so you're looking for those signifiers everywhere to be like, this is this, oh, I can't, you know, Neva can't be on these platforms, but I can be, that sort of thing, right? And yeah, I think just there's a clarity, visual clarity to it as well that makes it seamless to interact with and to move around the place. So yeah,
I mean, we went in with high expectations because this is kind of, it's Greece plus combat is kind of the selling point on the tin when we're kind of watching the reveal trailers, right? And it feels like it's that and more. And I think it's we have very high expectations. It met those expectations and more. And I think that always makes us come away from a game just feeling very refreshed. And, you know, if you're ever in the gaming funk and you want something short and impactful, a bit like I played Brothers years ago, you know, when I was in a bit of a funk, like this is that kind of game. Like it really makes you realize again, oh yeah, this is why I love video games, because it's something like we've said about Brothers and other similar games, like only games can tell the story that Neva is trying to tell through games. Like it's one of those, and it hits hard. It's good.
It's tremendous.
I'm looking forward to go-to discussions with this game.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely. You know, if you haven't been convinced already, just go play it. It's really, really good. I will say I've heard that the Switch version has a little bit of frame hiccuping here and there, which for a game like this could be a little trickier. So if you can play it somewhere else, I'd probably recommend that, especially because, like as we said, visuals make such a difference with this type of game. But apparently it does generally is a good version on Switch as well. So that's good to hear at the very least. And eventually we'll have a console where we don't have to say that anymore, and we don't have to kind of caveat
Not
it
that
constantly.
not far away, right?
No.
It should be round the corner.
Well, we're around the corner from them announcing it at the very least, right? But before March, they'll do it by March. They'll tell us what it is. So.
To come out like November next year.
Yeah. Lovely. All right. Cool. The other thing I'm pouring a lot of hours into recently is the follow-up to 999. So I talked about 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. I think that's the correct order. The game by Kotaro Uchikoshi, and I believe, was it Spike Chunsoft who published these? I can't remember, actually. I feel like there's a weird publishing situation that went on because the third one had like a Kickstarter thing and all that weird stuff going on with it. But anyway, the visual novel series, the Zero Escape series is its name. And I played 999 last year, did a big spoilery podcast with some members of the community. And it ended up very, very high on my GoTT to Coty. I think it was my number 1 game actually last year for that. And everyone said that its sequel, Virtue's Last Reward, was better in every single way. So I was like...
When did this game come out?
It's a good question. I think 999 was 2009. Okay. I think Zero Time Dilemma was 2016. So this came out sometime between 2009 and 2016. I'm not sure. Maybe 2013, 2014, maybe. So it's been out for a long time. And obviously, I think this is the one that most people hold in the highest regard. It's the one that people talk about of like, play 999, it's amazing, but like this is the shit. This is the one where it goes off the fucking rails. And so I of course am a big fan of going off the fucking rails. So I was very much looking forward to this. And lots of people in our Discord have started playing it again. People are replaying it now. And a few people have just come to it new and have finished it recently. And so I've been biding my time to eventually jump in and to do it. I didn't choose a great time because Metaphor ReFantasio came out and I played 42 hours of that in a week. So, like...
How many?
42 hours of Metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a regular thing for me.
So you're a third of the way there.
I'm a third, yeah. I'm doing quite well. Anyway, that game's incredible. It kind of, unfortunately, has knocked me a little bit off course of Virtue's Last Reward because I was 20 hours deep into this game. I was like 18 hours. I'm now like 21 hours. I played a few more hours today. God, I fucking love this. It's really like, here's the thing, right? I think 999 was an amazing game narratively, and I think the way it comes together at the end is exceptional, and everything ties together, and it's really, really good. There is a big chunky middle part of 999 where you're kind of going through different timelines. If you don't know, the way that these games are set up, they're visual novels, and they're murder mystery visual novels, essentially. They're kind of, they're called Zero Escape. They're kind of like escape room style visual novels where the setup is, hey, there's 9 people here, and you have these bracelets on, and you have to do these tasks, and if you don't, then something's going to get injected and you're going to get killed, right? And you have to get points, and you have to like pair them together to get through different doors, and like there's different numbers for different doors and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit like horror room escape setup in a way, but like with a really hooky narrative and mysteries everywhere, and like you don't know any, like you start out knowing nothing and all these things get revealed as you go on. It's just like cascade of reveals. But the middle of 999, I would say, like there's a lot of kind of repeating stuff because there's different timelines and you make different choices. So it's like, okay, me and you will go through this door, but you could have gone through this door with another person with a different combination, and so you can play through one timeline which is going through this door, and there's another timeline that's going through that door. And 999, it has multiple endings and stuff, and there's a bit in the middle where you're like just kind of like going through escape rooms and doing all this stuff, and you don't get as much narrative kind of movement in terms of like what's the overarching stuff going on here, what are the individual things going on with characters. You do get a lot of lore dumping, a lot of info dumping, which is like, oh, did you hear about this experiment in Nevada in the 1960s? Well, let me tell you about this. And like they go on and they kind of like lore dump this stuff, and you're like, why is this relevant at all? And then by the end of the game you're like, oh, it was all relevant for this particular reason. So it all kind of comes together. But I would say that was kind of like a bit of a weakness of 999. Virtue's Last Reward doesn't have that, and I think the reason for it is that every single timeline I've gone through so far reveals a new piece of information, either about an individual character and their backstory, or about something wider going on in the world, and kind of just builds out the lore and the kind of what is actually fucking going on here. Because the setup is that once again you are 9 people trapped in this place. It's basically a warehouse. You come outside and there's 9 of you there, and there's this mad fucking character who's basically a bunny rabbit, and they're called Zero, but they call themselves Zero the Third, and they're like, oh, I'm Zero, this is an escape room thing, blah blah blah, and you're already like kind of like, what's going on here? Because you already solved in the first game, the original one. You know who the zero was from that game. And you know, like, going into this, it wouldn't make any sense for that same person to be here running this. But there's a couple of things off. One thing is, like, there's a couple of characters here who were in the previous game, and you're like, why are you here? What's going on? So you talk to this Mad Bunny Rabbit, and they explain the rules, and it's called the nonary game, nonary being 9, essentially. And so there's 9 of you, and, like, you have these numbers. The only way to escape is to get 9 points in this version of the game. And the way that you get points is that you go through these rooms, you solve puzzles, and you get these card keys, and then you go into this basically voting booth, essentially. So there's a second game within the game. So the game is the nonary game overall, that's the whole thing. But then there's the ambidex game. And the ambidex game is you basically go into a room, and it's you versus another person. And you either say, I'm going to ally with this person, or I'm going to betray this person. So everybody starts with 3 points across the board. If you ally with somebody, and they also ally with you, then you both get 2 points. So you both benefit. If you ally with somebody, or if you betray somebody and they also betray you, you get 0 points. Both you get 0 points. So it's like you're betraying, but you come out with nothing. If you ally and they betray, then you lose 2 points and they gain 3. So it is this kind of like...
There's a name for that dichotomy. I've forgotten what it's called.
Yeah, I can't, it is like a psychological experiment thing, isn't it? Yes. I think they explain it in this game as well. I can't remember what it's called. But yes, it's basically that. It's basically like, what is the other person going to do? Are they going to betray or are they going to ally?
Yeah.
And so depending on that choice, it's going to cause different things to happen, and different people will get a certain number of points. And if you get 9 points, you can escape, essentially. You can walk out the door and leave, and everyone else gets trapped there for the rest of their life, basically. So there's a lot of bad endings of this game where somebody gets 9 points and just leaves, and then you're just like, it's like game over, you're fucked, basically. So there's a lot of kind of like bad ends that happen. But the way in which they use this across all the timelines is like, you get to that point of choice, and that choice is ally or betray, and that's where the timeline splits for each of those, basically. So it's a really cool setup. And I think narratively, very interesting. I think the way in which Uchikoshi uses timelines as a narrative device is fascinating, because they are a function mechanically of the game in order to see all of the story and all the content. But they always matter narratively in some way, and you never know how it's going to tie in, but it always is a factor in these games. Even in the AI, the Somnium Files, like, the actual narrative is always going to be tied in with the timeline somehow, and you don't know how it's going to happen. But there's already been moments of... So I've basically been going from left to right through all these timelines, and I'm like 21, 22 hours into the game now, and I'm almost done with, like, the kind of basic timelines. But what will happen is you'll get to a point in a timeline and it will lock you off sometimes, or you'll be like, oh, I don't have the information to continue, and then you keep going, you go through other ones and you gain more information, and then you can go back to those previous timelines, unlock that lock, and then get more story progress as you go through. So it's this kind of jumping back and forth thing of like, oh, I discovered this thing in this timeline, let me jump back to this other one, and your character's like, how did I know that information? Because your character is just experiencing these things like linearly as they go through. And then sometimes they're like, oh, I knew that, but how did I know? I just knew it. And like, I think that's the thing that's going to get explained eventually, right? And we'll understand why. But already I've got 4 endings, and each of the endings seems to be tied into an individual character in the cast. And kind of like that timeline is usually the one where you learn the most about them and their individual thing. And I think it's just doing an amazing job of breadcrumbing, right? I think mystery, I'm very into mystery stories and the ways that like they unravel secrets and things get kind of like hinted and dropped. This is just an exceptional job of like getting you those pieces of information, those nuggets that you're like, ooh, that's juicy. And you're like, ooh, what does that mean though? And that means that what's happening? And you're just trying to think of like all these possibilities. It's like, is like weird time travel involved? Is it that like we've been frozen? It's like there's loads of different things of like, how does this happen? How is like we were all like taken on different days? Like this game is basically set in 2028, which is very weird because like I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's not actually that far away in our real time now. But it's like clearly when this came out, it's like, oh, it's the far future 2028. But yeah, there's I think this game definitely, you have to be prepared for like some kind of some more like technological like magic-y, more technology type stuff, right? It's like science that's like a bit more out there, that's like, it still ties in and feels like they built into the real world and all that sort of stuff, but it's very a little more future leaning with that stuff. So there's different things that go on and get explained, but you definitely have to play 999 before you play this, because there's lots of references to it. Obviously, two of the characters are from there, and so that is something that I was like immediately like, what's going on with them? Why are they here? And you might not understand some of the stuff if you haven't had that context previously. They do give you more of it. They do explain it to you, but I think it's more rewarding if you have played that, because you're also kind of like using that contextually to be like, what's going on here? One of the things of like just trying to figure out who the person is behind all this is, at the very beginning, this rabbit character. So this rabbit character is the villain, but they're basically like an AI. They're like an AI from a quantum computer, and this AI just has been programmed by the person who's actually in charge. And the rabbit tells you at the beginning, one of you is the person who's doing this. They're like, Zero, they're among you, and you're like, okay, but how does that make any sense? Because I'm at a point now where I've like seen a lot of the character stuff, and I'm like, how are any of you, like, I don't understand how any of you could be. So it's just really, it dangles that carrot constantly, and you're always like, what the fuck, who's behind this, what's going on? And I guess like on a mechanical side, because I think for me, what draws me to these games is the story. Obviously, it's a visual novel for the most part, and that's the thing that kind of like gets you through. But I do think this game is a step up mechanically as well. Like there's a lot of basically the puzzles you do are escape room puzzles, and as you go through them, you are doing like these mini puzzles that are like, okay, line these things up based on this information. You're basically collecting things in a room, and you have an inventory, and you can use that inventory to like put things together, to be like, oh, here's this rod and this other thing, I'll stick them together. Oh, now it's a latch that I can use to open this other door and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of point and click adventure, but it's always very obvious what you have to do with that sort of stuff. And every room has like a regular puzzle and then like a bit more of a secret puzzle, and the secret puzzle will get you access to like additional information. Basically, it's called a golden file, and that golden file has like more info in it that you can pass through and helps better explain. Also does a bit more explaining about the connection between this game and the first one, which is very nice. But I have found for the most part those to be pretty satisfying, and I've got stuck a couple of times and had to look stuff up, but generally I'm like, oh, I can figure out exactly what I need to do. So for example, I did one today which was a garden, and the garden has these, you can turn off the lights. So you get this device and you put it together and you turn off the lights, and in the river in this garden you see a set of stars, and there's like some of the stars are small, some of them big, like they're different sizes, and they're all different colors. And there's a puzzle you have to end up doing, which is like, press these stars in an order, basically, and you can press them in like the order that they are in the river, and that gives you one password. But in order to get the actual secret password, you have to put them in the order of their size instead of the order they are in the river, based on their color. And so like that sort of stuff is like, there's a puzzle that the game expects you to get, and there's one that's like a little wrinkle to it that makes you have to think a little bit more, that I really appreciate, and I think is a good kind of additional challenge that they add. But generally these are a big step up from 999, because the puzzles in 999 were like, they were okay, but like sometimes they're just annoying and frustrating, and I would just be like, I'll look it up just to see what I have to do and just kind of get through them. There were more things to get through. I think that's what made the middle of 999 feel like a little bit more of a slog, was you have to go through so many different puzzle rooms in order to get back to the narrative stuff you want to. And in this game, they're usually 20 to 30 minutes long, and they're always engaging my brain, and so like I'm happy doing them. And then after you've done a escape room, you then get a big chunk of story. So it's like, here's 20 minutes of puzzle solving, now here's an hour of story. And so I feel like its reward structure is really good, where it's like it gets you to do that, but then you're like, oh yes, now I get to reveal stuff and find out what's happening. So yeah, I'm having a great time with it so far. Again, I've not really got to any of the major reveal. Like there's some stuff that's been dropped. I'm like, oh wow, what does that mean? Holy shit, this person got revealed as this, and like, what does that mean for this other person? Like that stuff is really satisfying.
How long is it?
I've heard like 30 to 35 hours,
and I'm like 18 hours in. I'm
20-ish. I'm 20, 21 now.
There's no major reveals yet.
No, there's been lots of big reveals. There has like there's a moment where like I was like, I can't say it out loud because I was like,
Spoiler.
are we fucking here? I was like, there was a place, and I was like, what the fuck is this game doing? Like, it was just like mad, and I lost my mind. And if you want to follow my ramblings, our Anime Bullshit channel on Discord has a lot of spoiler tag stuff from me just going crazy about it. So there's lots of good reveals, but I think the big, massive, like mind-shattering stuff that a lot of people have talked about, I've yet to get to. But plan is hopefully to do another community pod on that and go spoilers all the way through and talk about it, because it's a really special game so far. And you know that feeling of like, I'm going to play this game and I know it's going to be one of my favorites of all time. It's kind of that with this, I'm kind of like, right. I was kind of saving it because I'm like, I love 999 so much and everyone says this is better than that. So I'm like, it's kind of like, I know I'm going to love this thing. And guess what? Yes, I do. So big surprise there. But yeah, definitely, like, if you are into mystery fiction in any way, like, I cannot recommend these games highly enough. They are just so good at just dangling that carrot of like, what's going to happen? What's going on? Like, and also I just think the character writing is great. Like, the voice acting is excellent across the board. It's a star-studded cast, like Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, freaking Liam O'Brien, like, but basically all the Critical Role are in this game. And it's one of those things, again, I've watched like 2,000 hours of Critical Role, so even if they're doing a voice, I can tell it's them almost immediately. But they all do fantastic job with their roles in this game, and it's pretty much fully voice acted the whole way through, which is pretty remarkable, because it's like most of the game is story, and so most of the game is voice acting, which is great. And it's a really good, like, sit there for like an hour and you're like, man, getting some really good reveals. It's excellent. So yeah, we'll follow that up. I probably won't talk about it on the main show again, but we'll do a big spoilery discussion on it. But so far so good. For Virtue / Reward. Bali, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. You did finish it. So before we take a break and go to spoilers, what do you think of the game?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I think that it's helped by the fact that 2D Zelda has become quite rare. Like, we don't get them very often, and the last one was a remake. So just being back in a 2D Zelda world, and the game is actually, although the mechanic of the rod is very cool, the basic structure of the game falls into a lot of more traditional 2D Zelda, I would argue. Right. And it's nice to be back in those kinds of games. They're very satisfying. I think that the different towns, the different races you interact with, their challenges, all these things, till the end of the game are very strong and really enjoyable. And I really enjoyed all of that. I don't think that the kind of like quote unquote surprises near the end or anything like mind-blowing, and I've definitely got thoughts about those in our spoiler section. But yeah, I think that is this game a strong return for 2D Zelda? Yes. Is it really impactful that Zelda is the protagonist and Link is not? Is that like elevated Zelda's lore in any way going forward and like her role? And I think it kind of falls flat on that one by the time I got to the end of the game, and I think there are lots of spoilery reasons I want to talk through as to why I think that's the case. But as a mechanic, that like the Echo one is just awesome. And
how did you feel about those kind of like, because you were halfway through last time, and so the back half of the game dungeon wise is definitely, I would say, a bit of a step up in terms of complexity and like stuff that they do in terms of those. Did you feel that was the case? There
are some nice slightly more brain busty puzzles for sure. I think that there's some nice stuff in there, nothing that made me, I don't think I ever needed a guide, for example, and I think in previous Zeldas I've definitely used a guide occasionally. I think I'm trying to remember, but so I think the level of difficulty was good, fair. You're right, some of those dungeons are longer and more intricate, and I did enjoy that, especially as we've discussed before with the fast travel between the points and this kind of thing. Like that was all very satisfying, all really well done. And yeah, I did find the final dungeon a little bit underwhelming, and I can get into spoilers why I thought that was the case. But I think that the first 3 to 4 hours of the game are definitely the strongest, because it's
interesting. Okay.
I think that that's when it's rolling out the mechanics the most, and it's the most interesting. And I don't think the later game really reinvents anything in a meaningful way.
Did you find yourself falling into a pattern of, well, this works, I'm just going to do this every time?
I have 4 sets of solutions to vaguely 4 issues that keep coming up. I'll get out my set again that deals with that problem. Yeah, that definitely happens more in the later part of the game. I think you said that last time, and I agree. It just
like there is an echo that I got that was like, oh, well, he's just going to kill everybody. So I just stand here and he just does the job, basically. It was to the point of like, it didn't matter about the elemental type of the enemy, didn't matter about anything. It just, this guy would not take hits and would just basically kill everything very quickly. So it was like, well, it feels like a bit of a cheat code, but I'm like, the game's given it to me, I should probably just use it. And I think, I don't know, by that point in time, I think it maybe slightly overstays its welcome in the sense that you have done a lot of combat using different things, and by that point you might be like, I've done enough of this, I've experimented enough, now it's my time to just choose a big brute and let him do everything for me, you know?
Right. And I do think 25 hours is maybe the long side for this kind of game. Like, I think,
little bit, yeah.
Link's Awakening remake was definitely, I don't know, 16, 18 maybe, so there's definitely maybe on the long side, but it's all to do with pacing, not necessarily game length, as we've said before. And I think that's maybe where the issue is it's just there's a bit of repetition in there. There's certain things take a while, and yeah, I think it's a very strong game. I really enjoyed it. It's strong until the end, but I think we have become used to games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom that have really impactful moments later in the games, and I think those games are far stronger, obviously narratively and in lots of other ways, but this game never had a narrative or mic drop moment,
right? Which even Link Between Worlds does have, right?
Link Between Worlds does have, a
couple of times, right?
Deserves a lot of credit for including that in like a 2D Zelda. So I think that Link Between Worlds is still definitely the head honcho of the 2D space, and this is, I'd put Minish Cap above this, to be honest. I think this is probably number 3, but I think that the wand is fantastic, but like I said, those first 3-4 hours of really using the wand and exploring the world feels really magical, like really, really innovative in that kind of Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild way that we were really talking about last episode. And that magic didn't feel the same by the end, and especially around like the final boss and this kind of thing. So yeah, it's a really cool game. I'm glad I've played it. It'll definitely still feature quite high in my top 10, I think. But I don't think it's one of the old timers, perhaps, like a lot of other Zelda games definitely are. I don't know if you would be similar, having reflected a couple of weeks.
I think I've kind of I think I was definitely a bit more positive on the back half than you maybe are. I did really enjoy all those dungeons and going through all that sort of stuff, and I think that there's a flatness to it, a consistency to it, I think is the thing. It's consistently great, but it never has peaks or troughs. Like, I don't think it's bad ever. I don't think it's exceptional ever. I think it is really good the whole way through. And I think that's the thing that maybe loses at some points, is it doesn't have those peaks, those like moments of like, oh, remember that moment or that part or like that section in that done. Like, it doesn't have enough kind of exclamation points dotted throughout it to create that sense of like an adventure in that more traditional Zelda way, I would say. So that makes sense to me.
We'll get to more of my feelings in spoilers.
Yes.
For sure.
Cool. Well, that's going to do us for the first part of the show. But if you stick around for a little bit, we'll go a little bit deeper on Zelda and talk about some of those later game things Bally was alluding to. We will be back in a bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's time to talk about the legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom, in spoiler fashion. You can be a cat in this game. That's my biggest spoiler. You can be a cat.
I only got the 2 costumes. Like,
you are such a
vanilla boy
over here. I'm kind of surprised. I guess you didn't do that many side quests in the end, right?
No.
Which I did. I kind of like. I think the nice thing about it was like doing a bit of exploration after the 4th dungeon, the castle in the middle, and I basically went to Kakariko and went to other places and just started doing a bit of side quest stuff, because I think what happens is if you do the second dungeons, the later ones, you then get more side quests in those areas after you finish them as well. So there's quite a lot to do, actually. There's quite a lot of little things that you can get involved with if you want to. And so one of those was a side quest in... I don't think it's not Kakariko, is it? Maybe it is Kakariko. It's the one with the windmill.
It is Kakariko. I did find the one about the cats. You get the cat costume, right?
You get the cat costume, yeah.
Does it do anything different?
No, you just look like a cat. I think no. Here's what it does. You can talk to cats in the world, and they'll give you dialogue.
Oh,
basically.
That's fun.
Yes. So you can go around and just dress up, and then you can talk to a cat, and you'll get actual dialogue from the cat instead of just meow, which is good. So it basically turns Zelda into a druid who can talk to cats, which is fun. So yeah, she has a very cute cat costume, which is fun. I didn't use that often. It was just there for a little bit of, you don't want the final cutscene to be Zelda in a cat suit. It's a little kind of undercuts the tension, that sort of thing. So yeah, I left her out of that. But
I think a cat costume and a cat suit are 2 different things.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess, yeah, that's true.
The cat suit's a bit more like Catwoman,
right?
It's a bit more sexy.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I was like, when I got that, I was like, right, now we need fan art of Cat Peach and Cat Zelda, because they both, exist in these universes, which is quite fun. But
there's like a stamp suit.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, if you get all the stamps. I think I was 3 short in the end.
There's a Link costume apparently as well, which I never got either. I think you have to get all the echoes to get that one, maybe, or something like that. But yeah, there's quite a few. I got a good amount of them. I got the Gerudo one, which was the one with the mango challenge. So if you do all the mango challenge stuff, spinning, then you get the Gerudo one. That's cool. And you get a really big spin. And the Gerudo one's the coolest looking. So for the most part of the back half of the game, I played as Gerudo Zelda, which was good fun. And then you get the full princess outfit, basically. So you get the...
How'd you get that one?
I think the story gives that to you, doesn't it? Oh, wait, you didn't... No, it doesn't. You didn't do the side quest where the girl runs away from Castletown, did you?
I guess not.
So that's the back half. So you go to the king and you talk to him, and actually no, it's a little girl in the village. You talk to her and she gives you a thing, and she's like, oh, this is a present I give to my dad, and you're like, you can give it to yours. So then you go to the king and give him this present, and then it turns out little girls run away from the village and you have to go find her, and that basically just involves going to a spot where there's a still world thing, and you jump in and you get her out of the still world. And then the end of that quest, which is based in Hyrule Castletown, your dad gives you the king gives you your full Zelda outfit, the full princess outfit. Yes, exactly. Cool. So yeah, you have the fucking hooded outfit, the action Zelda outfit, and then the full princess outfit.
I love the idea of hooded Zelda, and like she's almost exiled and the king is turned. I think that's a great little story beat at the start of the game that is very cool.
Yeah, which they don't follow through on massively, but it's cool in its own right. Well, is there something in particular, Ali, you wanted to talk about here?
Okay, I've got a bugbear about this. This is probably my biggest gripe with the game. I don't have many gripes with this game. It's a very, very good game. I think the decision to have Zelda as the protagonist is awesome. Everyone wanted Zelda. We finally got Zelda. That's awesome. I think, and we were hinting at this last show, but the rigidity of Nintendo, that Zelda is the priestess and that the hero is still Link, and that within the world of Zelda, the hero can never not be Link, is very crap, to say the least. Like, it's just very rigid and frustrating, where so many other norms of Zelda have been broken, and even in terms of plot and who the Triforce is, who's the main villain of each game. Like if the villain can keep changing, why can't the hero change? Like it feels very frustrating. But I thought, right, but I was really intrigued by the final boss, because I thought, right, you're probably going to be fighting with Link in some way, but what does Zelda do in loads of Zelda final battles that is really unique to Zelda? There's 9 times out of 10, there's something to do with light arrows. And, light arrows, like hitting Ganon or whatever you're fighting in some way at the end, in some certain way, the timing of the light arrow, and it's like a Zelda tradition. Like, I think Link Between Worlds introduces light arrows in a really cool way, where you gain the light arrows and you can shoot them in the 2D world as it goes around the final boss arena and then hits Ganondorf Ganon in the back. Like, that's an amazing mechanic that is a tradition of Zelda while also doing something new. And I thought this game with the Echo system was going to do something cool with the light arrows. No, they weren't to be seen. Fine, fair enough. But then I thought that the final boss was just lacking in the sense that, and I sent you a picture like of me lying in a bed as Zelda while Link is fighting. And, like Zelda being the protagonist of this game is like, good chops to Nintendo. Like, that's good feminist energy, like
sure,
Zelda pulling the weight. We like
female
to see
director
that.
on this game, the first female director on a Zelda game.
Right. Great moves. But then they just like shoot themselves in the foot, because in the final battle, Zelda is not a bystander, but is definitely second fiddle to Link, who is the hero, as they have said numerous times in this story. They clobber you over the head with it by the end.
Yeah.
Link is still the hero. You're still the priestess, which is basically another word for sidekick. And you can get your echoes out. You can help Link. Very good. Very well done. And then that's the end of the game. And I just thought it was a real, like, the feminist in me just died a bit. It was just a bit like, are you kidding me? Like, there's not even like a cool, but we need Zelda and her light arrows because she'll save the day again kind of thing that I definitely thought they were going to ape on. And they just didn't.
It does feel like the least interesting boss fight in the game, because it is very much like, well, Link could just do it if you want to make it faster. Then
if you just want to defend and Link attacks, the game will end, right? Like, he will do
I'm pretty sure
damage. Like,
I think so.
It was a really, really weird decision, and I think it's cool that Zelda is the protagonist, but I think the idea that Nintendo have moved any further forward on what their view of male and female characters is and should be, and in a game like Zelda is just arguably gone even further backwards in some ways, which is really depressing, because I think that the role of Peach in Mario Odyssey was actually quite nice. And this just feels like one step forward, 2 steps back in some ways. And in the way that the story concludes and the way the final boss concludes, that's my main criticism of the wider game, but also the use of Zelda.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely, I was doing that fight and I was like, seems like a little weird to do this, where I get it, you want Link to be involved, and it's kind of like the two of us are doing it together, but it's almost like, so my favorite echo I used throughout the game was the Dark Nut, level 3 Dark Nut.
It's very good.
Who just like, even with the freeze enemies, he's like, I don't care, I'm just swinging, and he spins in a circle like a fucking spinning ball of death, and anyone who comes close to him is just shredded essentially. And so you just drop him anywhere, and he's just like, right, I'll do my job, spin. And like, Zelda felt like a mother being like, oh, my 2 boys, they're doing such a good job, she's like just standing on the side being like, oh, these good lads that I've raised.
I'll have a nap.
Yeah, exactly. She's just like standing in the corner being like, oh, look at these boys, they're doing a great job. Link and the Dark Knight working together to kill this boss.
And they take away your Link sword ability.
Yes, they do. Because, well, of course, because you give Link the sword and shield. So, obviously, when
name another game where you lose your ability at the final boss, not gain an ability. Like, of course it has to be the game where the lead protagonist is Zelda. That's the one game, she gives up her ability to be the hero in any sense whatsoever. Like,
right. Well, I mean, we were just talking off mic about how like Neva takes stuff away from you and then obviously at the end gives it back to you, but like there's a section before you get to the end where things are taken away from you which work narratively, and like that would probably work better here if they'd done it earlier, but it's done at the end, which
this is just taken away from you in order to revert back to the lore of Zelda, which can never change with Link as the hero. Thanks, Nintendo. Cool.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't great. I mean, I think it was interesting, weird that then there's like a side-scrolling part of that fight at the end also, where you're kind of like swimming underwater and
that was fun. Mix up.
It was okay. But
get the sharks out again.
Yeah, I love the sharks.
Love
my
the
favorite
sharks.
lads. They're great. They do a good job.
I could get, because I had 6 try parts, I guess you call them, by the end, and then the sharks were 3. You could get 2 sharks.
You get 2 sharks.
Yeah,
double shark action was very good. What were the echoes you leaned on the most throughout the game?
Those late game clouds are just very powerful.
Clouds are really broken.
They're just stupid.
I think the timing can be weird on clouds. Like if you fuck up the timing, then you drop all the way down, but you can infinitely climb with clouds as well. So.
Yeah. The ultimate Bally turtle strategy appeared near the end game with these like flying drones that shoot lasers that you can just by the end of the game. Did you ever get these?
No. What the fuck are those?
What are they called? It's basically like a little guy that hovers beside you and intermittently shoots lasers. And by the end of the game, they cost 2 try parts, so I could get 3 of them out, and it means that you can do a Bally turtle strategy. Hang at the back, and they just laser stuff in front of you.
Really?
Yeah, really cool.
I never got those. That's really wild. Okay.
I knew of the Lionel from being online, but I never got one. I know you have to go to that secret wood.
Yeah, I was very surprised by it because I was like, Dark Knot's the most powerful thing in this game, and then the last dungeon area,
like Shadow Lionel.
There's a Shadow Lionel. I was like, oh, wait, is there actual Lionel in this game somewhere? And I never found that either, which is a shame.
Finally, using my level 3 Lizalfos was very satisfying. I wouldn't say he's better or worse than the Dark Knight level 3. He's just different. So he's like better at like, I'm going to do a long jump and a big stab.
Right.
So like if the enemy's a bit far away, and then once he does that big stab, I can just get him out again, and he comes back and does another big stab. So if it's a little bit far away or it's a bit awkward, I would use him. But if it was just like a close-up enemy and like the final boss, like the Dark Knight was better for that. So I kind of alternated between those 2. I did a little bit of the 3 elemental whiz robes.
Oh, the whiz robes were really good.
Yeah.
I think the most challenging section of this game for me was killing my first whiz robe, because they're a fucking pain in the ass to kill because they disappear. And you can't, like, if you use the bind ability to try and grab them, they just evaporate and teleport away, and so you can't like hold them very easily.
You did Din first, North Elden Volcanic,
right?
I
did. So the fire one was the first,
and then you did Southeast and then North, or
I did Elden, then I did Farron Wetlands, then I did Lanayru.
Because I did Farron, Din, and then Lanayru.
So we both finished on Lanayru,
I'd be really interested if you do Lanayru first, because it's in my opinion got the most powerful echoes. With you get the cloud, you get that laser guy I talked about,
right?
You obviously get like the ice whiz robe. I think it's another couple obviously, but they just seem like they were more powerful echoes than some of the other ones. But
I think that
I thought Din was much easier than the other 2. Like Farron was maybe the longest, most challenging dungeon for me. I really enjoyed it still, and then Lanayru was also longer, and then the final dungeon it's almost like a half dungeon, which I don't mind.
It's not really a dungeon. Like, I think the thing that I think is a little silly about it is you don't have to fight anything, you can just run past everything, which is what I ended up doing. It's like, there's no reason to fight anything, because like there's nothing holding you back. You're just trying to get to the end of it.
That was one of the most challenging puzzles in the game. Was there's like a wall between you and Link, and Link has to get up high, and the AI on Link is just very finicky, like trying to get him to jump on the things you need him to in order to get up to things. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
I know the exact one you're talking about, and I'm going to tell you there's a very easy way to do that, because the immediate thing I did, I fucking bound Link and just jumped up there and put him where he needed to be.
That's a very good idea, because you
Yep.
built your own structure, bound, and then jumped up your own structure.
I didn't even build a structure. I just bound to him and jumped up.
Oh,
and
you don't even need a structure.
No, you don't.
Wow.
You just jump up and you just plop him on there, and you don't need to worry about AI at all.
Oh.
I heard it's very funny that you say that, because I heard another podcast where the exact same thing happened to two different people, and one person tried to fuck with the AI and make it work, and the other person just bound it, and that's the exact same thing that's happened with us. Where I just
It's not
blind
good
on it.
AI. It's like
No.
jump. I've
Right,
made it high
exactly.
enough. Jump.
Yes.
Gee, why are you not jumping? It was just like driving me mad. But
Yeah, no. I as soon as I saw that, I was like, right, you'll come with me, mate, and I'm just putting you there. And it took me like 3 seconds to do it. So that was that was much easier.
this is where all my extra playtime comes from.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes,
stuff
yeah.
like this.
I think like I wasn't using bind much in the early game, but once I started thinking about it and being like, this is a tool I should think that I have access to all the time, I just used it far more frequently, like just dropping enemies in pits and shit.
Yes,
just
there was one of the challenge room places with that guy in Kakariko. I don't think you did any of those.
I didn't know.
One of them was a room full of the mummy dudes. I've forgotten their name.
Fuck it. You mean this? Not the Redeads.
I mean,
the other ones.
They've got the bandaging. Or whatever,
Bandages. Yeah,
but
I can't remember what they're called.
And it's a room full of those plus these like wind turbine things, and you can like echo your own wind turbines to blow the guys into the pit. And I just could not do it. And then after a few attempts, I'm just like, right, I'm just going to bind them and drop them all in the pit. And I was able to do it in the time way more easily.
Mm-hmm.
It was very satisfying. But yeah, forgot that ability in that moment at the end of the game. So that's fun. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it worked out. I think I really did like. I think the dungeon that stood out the most to me was the Lanayru one. The way that you have to change the temperature with those orbs, and stuff. Like going back and forth and being like, okay, freeze, then unfreeze, then freeze. Like, I think there was some real satisfaction there. And I think from a thematic perspective, it's the one that still sticks with me the most of like, yes, that was an ice dungeon and there was ice theme mechanics and the way that it worked was really good. And like unfreezing the water to dive into it and all that. I just thought it was very well done and like not linear either. Like it had a lot of, kind of segments where you would go down into the kind of side-scrolling parts, and I thought that one was very well done. And also Conde is just a nice character. He's a fun little Yeti boy.
Yeah, slightly darker story around Conde, which is nice to see, I think, in Zelda, and is a bit more reminiscent of like the Twilight Princess. Snow Peak Ruins, is that what it's called?
Yeah. There's definitely some darker stuff going on, I think, with all these three stories at the end. Like the Elden one is like, well, my father died and so I don't know what to do anymore kind of deal. Trying to like step out the shadow of like a parental figure to create your own identity.
Farron one's like, we're all hooked on drugs.
And I was going to say, yes, they're all just like fucking like sniffing candy essentially. They're just like, oh yeah, got this sweet shit down my throat, which is very interesting. And then obviously the Conde's missing brother and like a bit feeling like, oh no, I need to be good because otherwise he's not going to come back and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that wasn't his brother, it was just another enemy or something. It's like, oh god.
Yeah. Well, I think in the end credits you see like a balloon which indicates like, oh, he's actually okay or something like that. So,
okay. Phew.
Yeah, we're fine. Conde's all good. He's a good little boy. So yeah, I think I liked all the little stories that were associated with those areas. I still probably think the Zora one's my favorite. It's just like, it's very simple, but
with the like two warring factions and then create music together. That was just really charming. Like this is easily the most charming Zelda by a mile.
For sure.
Really, really well done, start to finish.
Yeah, like just like all the little animation flourishes and just the vibes, the music. It's all really, really well put together. So I definitely agree with that. And I think like in terms of the overall like a lore narrative, Arlo made this whole video of being like, oh my god, they changed the lore of Zelda, and I'm like, okay, I mean, it's, I guess if you want to look at it that way, but like this idea of Null, which is, to be honest, it's a bit of a terrible villain,
pretty weak source of a fight of an enemy or a villain, right?
It's very much like it's the type of enemy that's like the unknown, like it's more conceptual evil than something. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, the pig Ganon
or
from Breath of the Wild.
The mist cleared, Null's mist cleared, and it revealed that Null was actually, and that didn't happen either. It was just like, no, Null is the thing. And
Null is just nothingness and hatred and whatever, all put into one, and we had to create the entire world to contain him, basically, because...
I was thinking there might be an evil twist with Try, was my initial prediction at the start of the game, but that never happened.
That would be far more interesting than Nintendo has capacity for.
Neither did my way better plot, which would have had the legend remaining as the priestess and the hero, but Impa was actually the priestess and Zelda was the hero for this game. That never came to pass. I still think that's a way better idea. Because you're kind of fooling the audience into, well, of course it's Link is the hero and Zelda is the priestess, but we're going to flip it on its head. But obviously that can't happen.
No.
Does Link need to be in this game at all?
I mean, no, but like, but then how is she going to get a sword and shield and bombs? You know, how else is she going to do that?
She just gets them.
Exactly. Well, yes, obviously, but from Nintendo, if you're thinking Nintendo brain, they're like, how does Zelda?
With my Nintendo logic hat on, no, that is impossible.
Exactly. There you go. Now
about?
You understand. Now you understand. I don't know. I think like this is, we've known this forever, and we always know this. Nintendo, they don't give a shit about story. Unless you're fucking Koizumi out there, like trying to get story into video games.
I think Tears of the Kingdom story is really good.
It's okay. I think it's fine.
Okay,
I think it's like
fair
serviceable, enough. But like it's core Nintendo generally that's not their priority, right? Like the way they make video games, they're like, okay, here's this tofu block. What does it do? Oh, it swims in the ground. Okay, great. That's a game. Now what do we do? Oh, let's make them some squid kids or something, right? It always comes second. Always. And I think much as everyone cries about the storyline for Zelda and the timeline and all of this stuff, at the end of the day, it's all just bullshit, and it's all just like we're gonna craft this onto the side of this idea that we had because we wanted to make this thing, and how do we make that fit with the Zelda story? Well, let's do this, basically.
I do agree. But in this realm of B-tier stories, which we can describe Zelda as roughly, or maybe even C-tier, whatever one would say,
sure, you
can still do, like, we are bad at stories, therefore Zelda can't be the hero, I don't think is a reason. Like,
no, it's not.
It's like just... And I think as flimsy as a lot of Zelda stories are, the idea that the title is The Legend of Zelda and that there are myths and legends that they roll into the stories... and then characters reveal themselves to be parts of those myths or legends, whether it's like Sheik and Tetra as like hidden Zelda, like that's a cool thing in and of itself. Like there's cool things they do narratively that this game seems to have none of, which I think is a shame.
Yeah, and I think I think every Zelda story is, relatively speaking, quite simple, but I think back in the day, like when Ocarina of Time came out and stories were quite nascent in games, it stood out then because like every game was about that level of storytelling.
Yeah,
and
like the intro to Wind Waker, stuff like that level. Like it's...
Well, like even the twist, like I think the thing about the Wind Waker that gets me is like it feels like it was connected to a deeper lore, a deeper narrative with
it's
the whole
one of the more
ocean.
Connected ones for sure,
Yeah, exactly. And I think since then, they've not really done anything like that. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom goes out of its way to, like, not connect itself to Breath of the Wild, right? Like, you go to places and people are like, who are you? And it's like, I wish that they would have leaned in. I think
Skyward Sword makes a big deal of being, like, the genesis.
A canonical thing,
the canonical start of it all.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. They like the timeline when it suits them.
Exactly, yes. When it's convenient.
Most of the rest of the time. And this game feels like it's ignoring it. And that's okay. I didn't need this game to fit into the timeline. What I needed is them to have a better purpose for Zelda and to say, Link, we can put you on the subs bench for one game, okay? You don't have to be in this game. Like I said, I think that Imp idea would have been better, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I think overall I was pretty happy with this game, and like it's a very simple kind of like story, and it's interesting that like Ganon is there, but then he never really comes back, which I wonder like what had gone on with that, because he falls into the hole, and then there's a shadow version of him, and then he just doesn't get mentioned.
You
again,
never see the real one again. You just
never
fight
do.
the shadow one at the end of the Hyrule Castle, and
Right.
then yeah. I like the way this game references other Zelda games, not from a timeline perspective, but a location perspective and boss perspective. So you've got Goma in there.
Yes.
You've also got Volvagia from Ocarina of Time.
Oh, Volvagia was a really good. That might be my favorite boss fight, actually. The Volvagia one,
Your favorite
enjoyed of this game. Yeah,
Okay,
I really
cool.
enjoyed that one.
I love a Goma fight. I just always love Goma in most games.
What did you use for Goma to get the knees to sort that all out?
Remind me what you have to do.
So it's weak to electricity. That boss fight. Do you remember that one?
I think I had the electric Wizrobe.
Oh, okay. I used Keese. I used electric Keese to go and zap
swarm
his
it a
legs.
bit more.
Swarm it, yeah, and then just jump on it and hit it. And then Volvagia was a case of like it's a bit tricky because like I used the bind ability to try and pull him out of the holes and stuff like that.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I used a lot of Lizalfos level 3 to just get his stabby stab on him.
Got you. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I like those two boss references. I like that you've got Hebra Mountain in here and Lineru Mountain that are like next to each other in this game when they're opposite sides of the map in Breath of the Wild. I think that's just a cool thing. Obviously, you've got Elden Volcano again. You've got Faron Woods Forest that's similar to Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom, is now like more jungly. I think that's a nice evolution of the idea of Faron.
Yeah, the tropical kind of vibes was refreshing. I thought. I was like, oh, this has its own, because obviously the Deku Scrubs there, and so that's cool that they're present. But like it feels unlike any kind of Faron we've had in the past. There's like a what do you call it? Like a very begins with a C, atmosphere to it. Clammy atmosphere, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Like sweaty, basically.
Right.
Kind of vibes.
And then you've still got like obviously Hyrule Castle, Kakariko. I like what they did with the two Zora towns. We've already talked about that. Like I think there's a lot of like nostalgia I have for Zelda that they just really hit on in this game in very obvious ways, but I still really appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting trying to look at it from the perspective, because I think when the game was first revealed, people were like, "Oh, is it a Link to the Past map again?" And it definitely, like, it's its own map. I think that's really cool that it's very much, some locations are in the same place, sure, but I think overall it's its own overworld, its own identity, and and I thought that was good, because it feels like we haven't had something like that. Now, would I want it to be like a little more refreshing in terms of locale and characters? Like, sure, that would be great. I feel like so often with Zelda, it's always like, and we're in Hyrule again, and we're using the same tribes and the same stuff, and like, I feel like we need a bit of a refresh on that.
I think the 2D series is now needing that. I think you're right, because it had been so long since we had a 2D game, and now we've got one. I feel like they might have felt like they, by having Zelda playable and having the Echo, I keep calling it the Echo one. Is that what it's called?
You mean like Link Zelda?
No, sorry, the main item you're using in this game, the wand.
The Tri-Wand?
Tri-Wand, there we go. So I like the Tri-Wand, and they must have felt like, right, you're playing a Zelda using the Tri-Wand, we're gambling on those two things. Let's keep everything else as kind of standard Hyrule as possible. I feel like you can do that one game, but then let's say Switch 2 has a brand new 2D Zelda, I don't know, 3-4 years into its life cycle. I agree. I think I'd hope they would mix it up a bit and, do an unusual change, like an Ocarina Majora kind of style weird change, like I think that we kind of now need that, rather than, you can't just do Hyrule again in 4 years and you get the beat to beat of Kakariko, Hebra Mountain, Lineru Mountain, this kind of thing. Like you do need a bit of something different, but it's nice that the 3D games have transitioned into the 2D world like they did in a number of ways, including locations and bosses in this game.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I think in the future, what do we want to see from 2D Zelda? I think like there's a way in which you can potentially keep this open structure but have a different mechanic
a real
to go alongside it.
Nice feel to it.
It's kind of like a gated open structure where it's like
Yes.
choose which one you want to do, then funnel you again, then choose which one you want to do again.
Here's
which
2
is
dungeons, do them, then you order it, then here's another 3 dungeons, and
Yeah.
then you have to do the dungeon in the middle. I think Wind Waker was a little bit like that at certain
A little
points.
bit, yeah.
Other
Yeah.
games have also done that, but yeah, it just gives it a bit of flexibility where semi-gated, like you said. I like that a lot, and I like the 2 lists of tasks to do. You got the side task, main quest, side quest. Keep them nice and split, clear. Give me, the little waypoint on the map. I enjoyed that as well. Like, it all just makes the gameplay experience smoother, which is what Zelda, in my view, should be. It shouldn't be brain busting on the exploration puzzle front.
No.
It should be like, hard but not too difficult.
Yeah. One last thing. How much did you use a horse in this game? Did you use the horse at all?
Hardly any. I looked up how do you get your own horse, because they kept saying you're renting a horse, you're renting a horse,
Yes.
you're renting it. I was like, okay, I'm renting a horse. Where do I get the real horse? I looked up. You go talk and you get the thing, and you get your white horse. That's cool. And then I used the horse a lot, doing all the horse challenges, which were fun. I managed to get under 17 seconds on that loop, which was
God.
difficult.
It's the hardest part of this game.
Yeah, it really is. And then I never used the horse again. It's a stupid idea for this game.
You know what's ridiculous is I was like, okay, when I get my horse, then I'll get an item that's a whistle that I can call it wherever I want. Yeah, I as far as I'm aware, that doesn't exist in this game.
I missed this as well.
Okay.
I looked it up. You get the carrot echo.
Wait, so you just create a carrot echo and your horse appears?
You create a carrot and your horse appears out of nowhere, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah. Well, if I'd known to do that, then I think that's okay.
But I had that ability and knowledge and still never used the damn horse. When am I going to use a horse?
Okay. Did someone in the game tell you about that?
No, I felt it was weird that there was no way to summon my horse, so I googled it and they said, oh, you need the carrot echo. So I went back to the area where you get your horse and there's carrots. They might have mentioned it and might have skipped ahead too quickly in the text. I don't know, but
there is a mission you go on with a carrot and a horse and stuff like that, but like I never put 2 and 2 together of like using that echo would summon the horse wherever you are, that.
Well,
I think
we just don't think outside the box enough is the problem.
Well, I feel like something like that, right? Which is
should have been a button on the D-pad.
A functional thing. Like I think it should be. I think it's very cool that that's a function of what the carrot echo does. But also, what if you could just summon the horse in a regular way that like is communicated? Because I think a player like me being annoyed that I was like, oh, I'm never going to use the horse because there's no way to get it. Like I feel like echoes are used in specific ways for different things, like combat and puzzle solving.
Yeah,
that doesn't fall into either. That's utility. That's functionality utility.
Totally.
Which I think. Okay,
I think it's a fun, quirky thing.
It's fun. I agree, but I think like it falls outside the remit of what the player is taught echoes are going to be used for. Which is why I think it's a little annoying that wasn't communicated, because I'm finding that out now, having been in the game.
I mean, I barely used the horse in like Tears of Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Like,
very true.
It's for a game, and this game's similar, but all 3 games, Tears of Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, this game, like you want to uncover things, you want to go at your own pace. I think the idea of a horse is just so. It's fun to ride fast from A to B if the game requires me to ride fast from A to B, but when does the game ever require me to ride fast from A to B? Like, I wish all 3 of these games, because they all 3 have horses, had more reasons why I should be going from A to B at speed on a horse. And, I just never felt that with all 3 of the games. So
I definitely use a horse a lot in Breath of the Wild, just for getting across expanses. And
I remember you went on like your quest to Elden Volcano early in the game, and like that's a cool use of a horse, because you're like, I'm just going to go as far as I can, see what's out there, and if I stop and try and explore too much, I'm just going to get my ass handed to me, so I might as well. That's a good use of a horse in my view.
Yeah, that's what I was doing, is like get there and then like I burned to death, and I was like, okay, well, we're not going back there again. But yes, it was good to have the horse to like cover that distance and just kind of chart some territory, which was nice. So yeah, but yeah, it's not really functional in this game, I would say. So anyway, it was cool. Cool horse. It was just very unique and interesting to have a horse in a 2D Zelda in the first place, which I think this is the first time that's been a thing. So
I guess so. But
it's cute. I like the horse in this game. It's very cute. And that's this game. It's very cute overall. I like it. Yeah, any final things, Valley, that we haven't brought up yet that you want us to touch on, or we're all good on Zelda?
Yeah, just again, where are the light arrows? Not even where are the light arrows, but there wasn't just like, the Mario Odyssey moment of, oh, now Bowser's the capture.
Right.
Whoa. Yes. And where's the, oh, now Link is the Echo, or Ganon's the Echo, or...
I was fully expecting you to echo Link. That was the thing. I was like, this makes logical sense. It ties in with the mechanic, and you're right. There was never this is a final boss echo moment, which I thought could have been really cool. But they never really did it.
Very by the numbers ending between that mini dungeon and boss. The mini dungeon was fine. The boss was less than fine, as we've discussed. But I just wanted to moan about that again at the end.
Sure.
But overall, I really did enjoy this game, so I don't want to be too negative.
Great.
It's a really good game.
Yeah, it's really fun. I think it's definitely up there in my favorite 2D Zeldas. So
same, yeah.
Just need Nintendo to make a few more of those so we can expand that list a bit.
Yeah,
that would be good.
And we will play Majora, and we will make a definitive list of Zeldas
one day.
It'll
happen. Lovely. Well, I think that's going to do us for this episode of the show. Thank you all so very much for listening to us. You can obviously find us in various places across the internet, and you can support us by going to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. Bally, what can they do over there, and who are we thanking for supporting us?
Yes, support us on Patreon. We have 2 exclusive shows. They are ThisNintendoLife, where we talk about all Nintendo games. You've just been playing Metaphor ReFantazio. What was I playing? I finally beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We both talked about that in the most recent episode. You can get all episodes of This Nintendo Life for a single $1. We have our other show on Patreon. It's called Bonus Bits. That's where we talk about everything and anything. This time we're talking about Alarmo. So you can find those bonus bits for $2 a month. Go support us on Patreon, and that would be greatly appreciated. I do have some patrons to thank. They are a $10 tier plus patrons. So a huge thank you to Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK, Alan, Turtle, Orange Thunder, and Ali T. Has he been in Zelda yet? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't checked his hour count.
Okay.
We do a live hour count
in Zelda, but
let's do an live hour count check on the show to see.
We
What's your prediction, Bally, for hour count on Ali's Zelda?
I reckon he's 15 hours not beaten yet.
Okay. The suspense is building. Can I find him on my friends list?
I'll thank patrons in the meantime.
Yes, go for
thank you to all of our other patrons and all our $10 tier plus patrons. We hugely appreciate all the support we're receiving. We've had a really nice steady growth on Patreon, which is hugely appreciated.
Ali T has played 20 hours or more, so I think he's finished the game, is my guess.
There we go.
Congratulations to Ali T on finishing a video game. Well done.
It's
very difficult. Very difficult. Great. Well, you can go do all that stuff. You can find us in various places on social media. I am at Lord NBZ, but I'm also NBZ on Blue Sky, which has seemingly in the last few days seen a influx of people joining it
because of the new functionality on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I think that's the main reason. I feel like, I don't know, mass exodus incoming potentially. We keep saying it never happens, but maybe it will this time.
Blue Sky said they've had 500,000 new users in the last week or two. So
right, yeah.
But it's a big number. It's not a crazy big number, so
no,
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, but you can find me there, NBZ. Actually, I don't know how Blue Sky, they do their weird nbz.bluesky.app or whatever the fuck, and I'm like, that's just not very easy to say. So just search for NBZ, you'll find me on there.
Yeah. I am on Blue Sky as well as Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91. I'm now doing that. Right, I've done a tweet. I'll copy it over to Blue Sky. I'm going to do 2 tweets. This is stupid. What are we doing?
Who's going to be the person? What is there a service that does them all at once?
So it used to be. They've got an owl as their.
Oh right. Yeah,
not Hootsuite.
That's like a business one. Hootsuite is like a more businessy focused one that you have to pay for to use. But
well, I know that, but it's still, you could like post on multiple social media things at the same time.
Although I don't know if like, because fucking Elon Musk is like, we're gonna charge $500,000 a month for Twitter API. So if you have to do that to link it to it, it probably doesn't make sense. But anyway, we live in this world where we just have to like tweet things 5 times to 5 platforms. So that's great.
Fun.
Just love it.
Yeah, go follow us on there.
Yeah.
I got a few new followers just with that exodus from Twitter, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Even though I hadn't done much.
We should probably just make a make a TNL
we should.
guy. I think we should do that. Lovely. Well, yeah, you can follow us over there. Find us there. You can join our Discord. It's a fun popping place, fun popping people. Again, lots of anime bullshit discussion happening at the moment. Which is great. So yeah, go and say hi and hang out. You can find the podcast in various places. You can watch on YouTube if you want, a different tab, or of course you can go to any podcasting service of your choice. If you use an app, you can download us every couple of weeks. We'll be in your feed and listen to us, and it's all nice and easy and good to do. So yeah, and you can go and rate and review us on those platforms, and also tell people if you like the show. That'd be good. And that, I think, is going to do us for this. But yeah, I think I've got a lot more Metaphor to play, Bally. That's my future.
Excellent.
So I'll chug on, but the game's great. It's really,
I think
really
the
good,
next
so.
long game I'm looking forward to is Dragon Quest 3 coming in November. We'll see. If the reviews are good, I'll pick it up. If they're like, it looks pretty, but it's still pretty old, plays old, I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested in playing that game.
Yes, indeed. I will definitely be picking it up, so that will be interesting when we get around to that. But until that point in time, we're going to bid you adieu, and we'll see you soon. Thanks very much for listening. Goodbye. The musical interlude used on today's show was A Withered Wolf from Neva. Copyright Nomada Studio 2024.